Nigeria's quest to qualify for the 2026 World Cup to be hosted by the US, Canada, and Mexico finally came to an end during the week. It was a sad, sad end for Nigeria football. Looking back at the pictures, this is how it all ended for the Super Eagles. And of course, it was one thing Nigerians never expected. We thought that the Super Eagles would go to the playoff taking place in Rabat, and of course, they will devour all opponents and make it to the next stage or the final stage of the playoff. But the Super Eagles failed when much was expected. A sad end for Nigerian football, and of course, a lot have happened after that defeat to Congo, that penalty loss to Congo. A lot has happened, and of course, a lot is being discussed. And on this special edition of NSM, Nigeria Sports Mouthpiece TV, yes, this is NSM, Nigeria Sports Mouthpiece TV. We'll be discussing lots about Nigeria sports, and of course, we'll be giving you bit-by-bit update on all that is happening around Nigeria football, Nigeria sports, behind the scene. Those things you don't see or those things you don't hear, you'll be seeing it on this show. Welcome to NSM. My name is Adewale Ajayi, and of course, together, let's take a look at what transpired before, during, and after that playoff competition involving the Super Eagles of Nigeria, the Lions of Cameroon, the Panthers of Gabon, and of course, the Mighty Boys of Congo, who eventually sent the Super Eagles of Nigeria packing from that competition. This is the second time the Super Eagles of Nigeria failed to qualify for the World Cup. We were not there in Qatar in 2022, and of course, we will not be there in the USA when this competition is coming home. USA, Canada, and Mexico. And of course, you know, Wale Ajayi is based here in Canada, and of course, I'll be part of the fun because the almighty Canadian national team will also be part of this competition. But again, like I said, let's take you back to what transpired. Let's take you back to what happened in Rabat, where the Super Eagles went. They saw, but they could not conquer. Wale Ajayi will be back after this short break. You're still watching NSM TV as presented by Adewale Ajayi. And of course, like I told you, this is the show that will tell you all that transpired before, during, and after the Super Eagles matches in Rabat. And of course, together, we'll be looking at this whole thing. How did it all start? How did it all end for the Super Eagles? Now, let me take you back to the Rabat debacle. Let me take you back to the big match against the Gabonese national team. Remember, 2 days before the match against Gabon, the Super Eagles of Nigeria decided to go on strike. What happened? These boys decided not to play just because they were being owed few money. How much were they being owed? They were being owed 150,000 US dollars. Can you believe that? Our dear Super Eagles decided not to play just because they were being owed 150,000 US dollars. And that got me mad. Immediately I got into Morocco. Immediately I got into Rabat. I started asking questions. I went to the National Sports Commission to demand answers as to why the Super Eagles have decided not to train because they were being owed. And again, I wanted to know who was owing the players. Of course, I spoke with the DG of the National Sports Commission and of course the chairman of the NSC, talking about Malam Shehu Diko. And of course, I also went to speak with the NFF because I needed clarification as to who was owing the players and of course, what was being owed. So when I sat down with the chairman of the National Sports Commission, he showed me documents as to why the Super Eagles have refused to train. And you will not believe it. The reason why these boys refused to train was because they were being owed 150,000 US dollars, being money that was supposed to have been paid to them after that win against Benin Republic. In that match, we won by 4 goals to 0 in Uyo. Now, that's a sad one. Will you say that? Yes, it's certainly a sad one because I wonder why 23 players of the national team are fighting over just 150,000 US dollars. That, to me, is a letdown on the part of the players. But again, what happened? Nigeria Football Federation, NFF president, I want to ask you again, why did you refuse to give the boys their money? And of course, the NFF president in his reply told me that they thought that the NSC was going to pay them. And of course, the NSC also said they thought that the NFF was going to pay the money. You see, that is what we call communication breakdown between the NFF and the National Sports Commission. It was total communication breakdown, and that was why the players did not get their money, and that was why the players refused to train 2 days before the match against Gabon. But eventually, they came back to train afterwards, and of course, they defeated the Gabonese Panthers by 4-1. Kudos to the boys. Kudos to the boys. They won that one by 4-1, and everybody went into dancing mood. We danced all night. We celebrated all night. We thought that these boys are going to kill the Congolese national team. We were so excitedly looking forward to that match against Congo. But when much was expected, the boys faltered. A sad end to the playoff. Well, let me tell you what actually happened. Now, this is what happened. Just when we thought that there was peace in the camp, and just when we thought that everything has been calmed down because the National Sports Commission chairman, Malam Shehu Diko, personally made a transfer of $150,000 to the team secretary, Dayo Enebi. And of course, when Dayo got that money, Dayo went to the camp and told the boys that we have got money for you. And he shared $150,000 among the players and the officials. And everybody was happy. In fact, after the win against the Gabonese Panthers, the National Sports Commission and of course one of the sponsors had promised the players that for every goal that was scored against Gabon, they will get $30,000. So what it means is that after the 4 goals scored against Gabon, those boys got additional $120,000 for their effort. Is that not enough? I thought the boys should be happy. I thought that should galvanize them. That should motivate them to go all out and destroy the Congolese national team. In fact, let me tell you something more. In fact, the same sponsor came out to say that if these boys can beat the Congolese national team, is going to give them $50,000 for every goal that is scored against the Congolese national team. So I also expected that would be another form of motivation for the boys to go all out and devour the Congolese. But when much was expected, these boys, like I said, faltered. Let me quickly say something that is very, very important, something that is very pertinent. I want to say that for Nigeria sports, or perhaps for Nigeria football to move to the next level, there must be a good understanding between the National Sports Commission and the Nigeria Football Federation. I also want to emphasize the need for the NFF to respect the National Sports Commission. The officials of the Nigeria Football Federation don't seem to accept the fact that the leadership of the National Sports Commission are in charge of sports, and of course, they need to play along to give them their due respect for Nigerian football or Nigerian sports to get to where it needs to be. Now, let me tell you what actually happened. It got to a point where you begin to sense the fact that between the Nigerian Football Federation and the NSC, there is not that perfect understanding of friendship among both parties. Now, that was one issue that I took time to study, and of course, I sat down to speak to both parties, and I discovered that all was not well among these two parties. But again, the truth is the fact that I think the reason is that because the current chairman of the National Sports Commission, talking about Shehu Diko, used to be the second vice president of the NFF, and that perhaps is the reason why some members of the Nigerian Football Federation still see Shehu Diko as part of them, and they are like, no, we know him before, he's our colleague, and of course we cannot respect him. I want to emphasize the fact that the NFF must respect Malam Shehu Diko. Malam Shehu Diko is the father of Nigerian sports, and of course, if they really want to do business with the NSC, they must show total respect to the leadership of the National Sports Commission, led by Malam Shehu Diko, and of course, Bukola Olopade, who is the DG of the National Sports Commission. And of course, in the last 6 months, I discovered that the NFF have not complained at any time that they've not gotten money from the National Sports Commission. They've not complained at any time that they were having financial issues concerning the Super Eagles and the national team. And of course, we expected that when that issue eventually came up, before the match against Gabon, they should have been able to manage it in the best possible way. Well, I think the NSC was able to manage it, but I must also emphasize the fact that the NFF did not do so well to manage the situation. But again, I'm happy with the fact that at the end of the day, we went out, we played against Gabon, and we won that match. But against Congo, we lost the match. And now the blames are coming back on both parties. Is it the NFF that should take the blame, or the National Sports Commission that should take the blame? I want to shift the blame in 3 places. The huge part of this blame should go to the players, the Super Eagles players. Those players, I must say, are not dedicated. The national team players of Nigeria are not dedicated enough. I don't see any reason why players of the national team will protest on the eve of very important match against the Gabonese national team. These players have not shown that they are patriotic enough to serve this nation. These players have not shown that they deserve to wear the green, white, green jersey of Nigeria, because on a day when much was expected, these boys faltered. These boys failed Nigerians, and of course, Nigerians will never forgive them for the part they played in this particular competition. Let me also emphasize the fact that the NFF also did not play their game very well. I remember that just 3 days before the match against Gabon, the National Sports Commission gave them 1 billion naira. Yes, 1 billion naira to prosecute that assignment. Of course, out of that 1 billion, the NSC expected that they would have given part of the money to the players, and of course, they should have been able to settle whatever issues that were on ground, even when the NSC DG and the NSC chairman were in Saudi Arabia as part of the delegation to the Islamic Games. But unfortunately, the NFF did not act fast, and their failure to act fast was the reason why those players decided to embark on strike. And I want to put the blame on the Nigerian Football Federation for not doing what they needed to do at the right time. Again, I also have some blame for the National Sports Commission, because I remember that after the match against Benin Republic in Uyo, the chairman of the National Sports Commission made a promise to the players that they were going to pay them the remaining balance of their match bonuses. The NSC should know that whenever you make a promise to players, you must learn to fulfill your promise. If you are not going to fulfill that promise, you should be able to liaise with the Nigerian Football Federation and make them understand the need for them to take money out of whatever, from wherever they can get, to be able to sort out that issue. For me, that too was a slide on the part of the National Sports Commission. I want to say this to the players, the NFF, and of course the National Sports Commission. You have one last chance to satisfy Nigerians. You have one last chance to make Nigerians happy again. You must go all out and win the African Cup of Nations in Morocco. You have this opportunity to give Nigerians, to put smiles on the faces of millions of Nigerian football fans, because this is the only competition left for the Super Eagles in 2025 to 2026. We are out of the World Cup, and this is an opportunity for you to right your many wrongs. And I hope that the NFF, the National Sports Commission, and of course the players understand how important this Nations Cup is to Nigerian football fans. And I pray that they will go all out there and win the Nations Cup come January 2026. After all said and done, now let's look at the way forward. The way forward for Nigerian football is for the NFF, the National Sports Commission, to go back to the grassroots. We need to go develop football at the grassroots level. We need to get our under-17 national team to go kicking again. We need to get our under-20 national team to get back to the basics. And of course, we also need to develop football at the grassroots level. Somebody should think of how to revive the Principal's Cup. I remember that the former sports minister tried to revive the Principal's Cup, but the competition is dead again. We must go back and get the Principal Cup kicking again. We must also ensure that we go to the grassroots and discover budding talents that will take over from this crop of Super Eagles players, because as it stands now, there is a big gap between our youth football and our national team football. We don't have players that can take over from the likes of Wilfred Ndidi, the likes of Truss Ekong, and of course the likes of Ajayi. Most of these players have gone past their prime, and it is high time for them to bid goodbye to the national team. But if these players say goodbye, who are the players that are going to take over from them? In the last 3 editions of the Under-17 World Cup, Nigeria has not qualified for the World Cup. And of course, the Under-20 national team of Nigeria has always been there, but they've been knocked out in the second round of the competition. So what it means is that our youth football is totally dead. Our youth football in Nigeria is totally dead. And I put that blame on the Nigerian Football Federation. They must do everything humanly possible to revive Nigerian youth football. If that is done, then the future looks good for Nigerian football. Without that being done, the future is looking very bleak for Nigerian football. But again, like I said, let's go back to the basics. We need to go back to the basics if we really need to revive Nigerian football and get back to where we used to be. And finally, I also think that there's need for us to also go around Europe to scout the best Nigerian talents. I can tell you conveniently that we have over 20 wonderful footballers that are out there in Europe that are playing for top clubs but have not been invited. They've not been given the opportunity to come and play for the national team of Nigeria. I can also tell you that players like Kani Chukwuemeka, who plays his football for Borussia Dortmund Football Club, is willing and ready to come and play for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. We have so much talents out there in Europe. And I think that it is high time we put our searchlight out there and look for these players of Nigerian nationality who wants to do it for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. We are going to the Nations Cup in the next 1 month from now, and I think for us to go to the Nations Cup and perform beyond reasonable doubt, we need to go and look for talents out there in Europe that are willing to don the jersey of Nigeria and play for the Super Eagles. That is my final advice to the Nigerian Football Federation and, of course, to the National Sports Commission. You guys must put aside your differences and focus on pushing Nigerian football to the next level and giving us the result we so much deserve. This is the very first edition of NSM TV, Nigeria Sports Mouthpiece TV. And, of course, we'll be bringing this to you every weekend on this channel. Adewale Ajayi signing out now.